Hey everyone, and welcome to Great Lakes Church Online. My name is Carson, and it's such a privilege to have you joining us. If you don't know who we are a community of people helping people find and follow Jesus. We're based in the southeast Wisconsin area with one physical location in Kenosha, but hopefully many more locations as you tune in on YouTube or any podcast platform to check out this week's dose of encouragement. We hope that whatever you hear today prompts you to take the next step in your faith journey. And if you'd like to know more about who we are, get involved through giving, or just join us in our physical location, go to greatlakechurch.com to find everything you need to know. But until then, enjoy the talk.
By a show of hands, how many of you have been to Disney World at some point in your life? And if you would keep your hand up, how many of you would like to go back someday? Always fewer hands. Disney World is kind of a polarizing place. You either love it or you hate it. And I am just going to tell you, I love it. In fact, my kids are not getting any help for their college tuition because we spent it all taking them to Disney World. But we decided we don't need money, we need memories. And so we just gave it all to Mickey Mouse. Here's what's so funny about Disney World, though, is their tagline is, the place where dreams come true. If you don't believe me, just ask their ads.
Morning.
Morning. Morning.
Every day, we prepare to make your dreams come true in ways you've never imagined. Come live your dream during the Year of a Million Dreams going on right now at the place where dreams come true. Visit DisneyParks.com.
Does anybody else get goosebumps watching that? I mean, I've probably watched it 15 times and I still get excited. And I'm childish enough where in my mind I still kind of want to believe that those things are real. But you and I both know they're not. And what can be so hard about Disney World is that dreams can quickly become nightmares, where we are waiting in really long lines, and we are fighting through really large crowds, and we are spending $15 on a hot dog, and it is 95 degrees with 95% humidity, and we are paying a lot of money to be miserable. But it's the place that you saved to go to. It's the place that you planned to go to. It's the place where you really believed you were going to make memories with your family that lasted a lifetime. And then once you get there, sometimes even before you actually get there because something goes wrong at the airport, those future dreams are dashed. Those future hopes are quickly eroded. And that's kind of how life is in general, isn't it? For the first couple weeks of this series that we're calling Starting Again, we've talked a lot about what happens when things that we've already experienced didn't go the way we planned. But what happens when things we've been hoping for and planning for never actually come true? What do we do on that end of the spectrum? So it might be something like a vacation that we've worked really hard for. A vacation that we've planned a ton for. A vacation where we finally were able to get all of the family together and agree to go to this one place and do this one thing, and then so-and-so got COVID. Or so-and-so got called into work. Or so-and-so wasn't able to come up with the money in time, and the vacation went away, right? For some of us, we graduated from college and we had big plans for our career. We thought we are going to get that starting job that gives us a lot of money right out of the gate. They're going to give us a lot of tech to use. They're probably going to give us a company car, corner office. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to climb the ladder and I'm going to be the CEO of that company in no time. Your first day, you realize that was never going to happen. And your hopes and your dreams all of a sudden went out the window of that corner office. It could have been something like your financial plans. Some of us might be at the age where we would love to retire, but we aren't quite there. For some of us, we're graduating from college and forget the career, we would just like to be able to eat more than ramen, but that's really difficult. We had big dreams, big hopes. Then reality hits and those things go out the window. Romance, right? Some of us used to play a game called MASH when we were kids. Do you remember this? On paper, this is dating me. I understand that. Where you planned who you were going to marry and where you were going to live and what you're going to do for your job, and it was going to be happily ever after. And here we are. Adults. And it's not the way we thought it was going to be. Now, what's so interesting when that happens is that we start to get very frustrated and we can stop dreaming pretty quick. We can stop hoping pretty fast. We can stop believing that anything better is coming because our experience has shown us nothing is. Now, here's what I want you to understand. It's just that your dreams are too small. It's not that you're dreaming the wrong ones. It's not that you're hoping for the wrong things. It's this, that they're too small. You might put it this way. God's dreams are bigger than your dreams. And God's dreams for you are the ones that will happen. They may not happen on your time frame. They may not happen according to your plan. The end result may not actually be the one that you thought, but the things that He's been dreaming for you for your whole life. And I don't mean, this is not about you being rich. This is not about you being famous. This is not about you always never getting sick. This is just what God has been thinking up for your life is 10 out of 10 times bigger than you thought for your own life. And there is no better example than this for this in all of the scriptures than a man named Joseph. You find Joseph, you meet him in Genesis. This is the very first book of what we call the Bible, right? And a lot of us, that's where we start. We don't start with Jesus because he's later on in the story, we think, and so here's Joseph at the beginning, and he has this amazing life, but it's not an easy one. And it all begins with dreams. You could argue that Joseph's life started like a Disney ad. He had dad's favor. He was one of a lot of sons. And I mean a lot, like 12. And dad thought he was the best one. And dad bought him a coat. You've probably heard of Joseph and the Technicolor dream coat. That's based on this Joseph. He had this cool coat that he was really proud of, and he kind of bragged about it to his brothers, which was probably not his best choice. But who doesn't do that, especially when you're the littler brother? And his brothers are jealous, of course, but what really sets them off is that one day Joseph has these dreams, like sleeping dreams, not dreams of aspirations, but they kind of become that for him. And in the dream, whatever happened in the dream tells him that one day his brothers are going to bow to him. Now think about this. If you went to your sibling when you were a kid, your older sibling, if you had one, were like, hey, one day, you're going to bow down to me. I tried that with my little siblings because I'm the oldest. They didn't like it. Didn't go over well. So his brothers are mad. Like, we're going to kill this kid mad. And so they decide that they were going to throw him down in this cistern. And they were just going to let him die there. And they were going to kind of fake this animal getting him kind of thing. And you're going to hear about that in a minute. But eventually they sell him into slavery. But this is kind of how it goes down first. Here comes the dreamer, they said, talking about Joseph. Come on, let's kill him. and throw him into one of these ditches or one of these cisterns, or a well maybe. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him, and then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. Yeah, we're going to bow down to you. Watch this. And they literally hatch this plan to murder their brother and then lie to their father about how he died. Now, luckily, one of the brothers kind of comes to his senses and decides this is probably not okay. Like, probably not cool with God, probably not cool with Dad, probably not cool on any front. So what if we sell him into slavery? Because as they're having this conversation, this train of slavers comes down the road and they say, well, let's pull him out of here. And at least we haven't killed him. We've gotten rid of him. He's no longer the nuisance bragging about his cool jacket and all his dreams, but we at least didn't kill him. And that won't be on our head anymore. And so they sell him into slavery. Now here's what's amazing about what happens next. Joseph ends up living and working for a man named Potiphar. Now, Potiphar is the captain of the Egyptian palace guard. He is not a small deal. And Joseph ends up being so good at being who he was supposed to be for Potiphar that Potiphar brings him up the ranks with him, and eventually he's in charge of all of Potiphar's affairs and his whole household. It's kind of amazing, isn't it, that Joseph had this dream that was going to happen with his brothers. That seems to be dashed. He ends up in this place where he never would have dreamt he would be, and he's succeeding far beyond anything that he would have imagined. The problem is he's really good at his job, and he's also really good at looking good. And Potiphar's wife takes to him, like throws herself at him, kind of takes to him. Joseph, being an upstanding guy, though, rejects her forwarding and says, you are married, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, an Egyptian palace guard's wife scorned, but it ain't good. So she makes up this whole story that he came on to her and that he tried to take advantage of her. And this is what she tells Potiphar, her husband, because just like his brothers, now she wants to get him out of the picture. And so this is what happens next. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. And the story goes on. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held. And there he remained. At one point, Joseph is walking behind a camel wondering, how did I get here? And in the very next frame of the story, he's sitting in a jail cell wondering, how did I get here? This was not what I was dreaming. This was not what I was planning for. And whenever there's a gap between what we're hoping for and what actually happens, that's dangerous territory for us mentally and emotionally, because we will fill that with all kinds of questions about God and suspicions about God and feelings that we're having. And if we aren't careful, it can literally throw life off the rails. That's not what happens with Joseph, though. Amazingly, as he sits in this prison cell, he does what he does. He's just who he is in this new place, and he begins to climb the ranks in the prison. And not just in a beating up other guys in the prison kind of way, but where the jail warden takes a liking to him and he says, you know what? Joseph is so upstanding and he is so good, I'm going to put him in charge of the whole jail. Because that's what good leaders do, right? They delegate off their responsibilities so they can go watch YouTube. And that's what this guy does. He goes, hey, if Joseph can just run the place, then I don't need to worry about it. So Joseph is in charge of the whole cell block. And wouldn't you know it, a couple of Pharaoh's closest servants get thrown in jail. Remember, this is the king's prison. And so his cupbearer and his head baker get thrown into jail. Some shenanigans that Pharaoh didn't like, and Pharaoh's Pharaoh, so he can do whatever he wants, and he puts them in prison. And while they're in prison, they start having some dreams. Joseph is becoming kind of a dream interpreter. And so they share their dreams with Joseph, and he tells them what's going to happen, kind of what God's promises. And part of it is you're going to get out of jail. And wouldn't you know, a little bit later in the story, they're getting out of jail. And Joseph comes up to them, and this is what he says. Please remember me. And do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. He says, listen, I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Think about this. Joseph is just being a good citizen over and over and over again, dreaming about the day where he gets to realize what he felt God had promised him, that he would have influence and he would have authority and he would be a help to a lot of people. That's the substance of the dreams that he's having. And over again, he's lied about, he's cheated, he's imprisoned falsely, he's forgotten about. And so here, Joseph's life seems to come to a screeching halt. As you read through the narrative, and I would encourage you to do it at some point, sit down with Genesis. It's the last few chapters of the book where you read about Joseph's life. There's these moments where you think it's kind of crescendoing and it's going to come to this great moment, like in the movies, where the good guy wins finally. But here Joseph is still sitting in the jail cell, life to a screeching halt, going, how did I get here? Not unlike you and me have done in our lives. How did I get here? This was not what was supposed to happen. My mom and my dad told me if I put my mind to anything, I could do it. I was told that one person could change the world. Now I'm struggling to pay my bills. I'm eating dinner alone again. I haven't gone on a vacation in 3 years. I hate my boss. I don't like where I live. How did I get here? Because when we were kids, when we were young, when we were coming up in the world, we thought it would be better than this. And what happens to us, and what I imagine, at least for a fleeting moment, happened for Joseph, is we realize discouragement on discouragement on discouragement on discouragement ends up in defeat. When we play any sport, if the other team scores enough points, more points than us, we lose. For a lot of us in life, we've gone, I have just been outscored every turn. And so not only do we start to get depressed, but we start to go, I'm never trying again. Who am I to dream big? Who am I to think outside my box? Who am I to think that I could come up out of this neighborhood and make any kind of difference? Who am I to think that my story matters to somebody else? And we don't get there because we are a loser. We've gotten there because we've just experienced so much discouragement so often. We're just tired. And I imagine that at least at some point, Joseph felt that. Here's why. Because his dream was taking an awful long time to come true. They forget all about him in prison. This is what we read. 2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing on the bank of the Nile River. Now, this dream changes everything. But I want you to understand. I want you to think about 2 years. You know what's 2 years from today? 2025. You know what was 2 years ago today? Wearing masks, not going out in public. That's a long time. That's a really long time to feel like everything I was hoping for is no more. It's not just that I haven't succeeded. It's not just that the things I've gone through have been hard. It's not just that something that was kind of progressing came to a screeching halt and I lost it. It's what I hoped would become true is also coming to a screeching halt. And so what do I do other than just sit here and wait? Which is really hard, isn't it? I mean, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to believe that I was made for big things or made to do certain things and kind of have a plan in place, and then it just never seems to take off. And that is Joseph's life. Until Pharaoh's dream. And at that point, the cupbearer, by the way, the baker died a very gruesome death. Worth reading. It's very interesting. The cupbearer, when Pharaoh's talking about this dream, he goes, you know what? You remember when you threw me in prison? That's always a weird way to start a conversation. You remember when you threw me in prison? There was a guy there. His name was Joseph, and I had a dream. And I told him about my dream, and he told me what it meant. And you know what? It came true. You should look him up. So Pharaoh does. This is what happens next. He interprets the dream. It all comes true. Joseph does what Joseph has been doing his whole life and showing up consistently. And this is what Pharaoh says. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, only Pharaoh, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. This dude went from the bottom of a well to following a camel down the road to being lied about by a guy's wife and thrown in prison, always working hard the whole way through, being left in prison for years, tells Pharaoh about a dream, and now is Pharaoh. He's in charge of Egypt. And Joseph, in the dream that Pharaoh has, it's about a famine that's going to come. And Joseph comes up with a plan on how Egypt can not only survive the famine, but help all of the surrounding lands survive the famine as well. And Pharaoh goes, great plan, do it. And so they start saving up grain and they start saving up products for when that famine comes, and they won't have those things readily available from the land. And so the famine comes and they start handing out these things. And at some point, Joseph's brothers get hungry. And they decide, we're going to go to the place where we've heard all the food is, and they go to Egypt. And they encounter the guy in charge of all of the land of Egypt, the guy who's putting this whole plan into action. And you know what they do? They bow low to the ground, not knowing that that guy is their little brother, that all those years back, they sold off like he was property. All those years later, Joseph's dream came true, but it was bigger because it was God's dream. I have to imagine that at one point he stands above all these people and he goes, how did I get here? I remember the stink in the jail cell. I remember the mold and the moss in the bottom of the cistern. I remember the camel's rear end. And now I'm here? How did I get here? And in that moment, he realizes that his dreams were too short, too small, and he was too in the middle of them. Because this is what he says to his brothers once they understand who he is. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. It was not so that I could rub it in your face. It's not so that I could tell you, I told you so. It's not so that I could win and you would lose. That was way too small of me. These are actually God's dreams and God's plans. God's dreams are bigger than your dreams. That's been true for Joseph. That's true for you. Part of this that I haven't shared with you yet is a consistent line that's repeated Every chapter of Joseph's life, when it goes wrong, so when he ends up in the bottom of the well, when he ends up at Potiphar's house, when he ends up in the jail cell, when he ends up forgotten, this phrase comes up over and over again. The Lord was with Joseph. And if you remember last week, we talked about it's in God's name. I'm with you. In those moments where your dreams and your hopes and your visions for the future are dashed, I'm with you. In those lower chapters that you're going through, I'm there with you. And I have a plan for your life. I have a dream that's in my heart for your life that's bigger than you can possibly imagine if you will just watch to the end. What Joseph didn't know, what his dad didn't know, what his brothers didn't know, what Egypt didn't know, what any of the Israelites didn't know for generations was just how big God's dream was for Joseph. Because you don't actually find it until the New Testament. In these words, this is the record of the ancestors of Jesus, the Messiah, a descendant of David and of Abraham. Get this. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah is one of the brothers that sold Joseph into slavery. And if it weren't for Joseph, Judah would have died of starvation. And if Judah would have died of starvation, there would be no Jesus. See, God's dream for Joseph didn't have anything to do with Joseph. It didn't have anything to do with Egypt. It didn't have anything to do with his brothers. God knew that one day he was going to send his one and only son, the King of Kings, to save not just a region, but a world for all time. If we could jump back to little boy Joseph in his fancy coat and say, did you know that in the future, here's what God's going to do in and through you? Joseph would have been like, wait till I tell my brothers that. That's an amazing thing to think. My question to you is, why do you think you're any different? Why do I think I'm any different? Why do I assume God only wants to do small things that are only about me? See, sometimes you and I, we have to differentiate between our dreams and God's dreams, even though they aren't always different. The dream that Joseph had for his future was not different than the dream God had. He just didn't understand the parameters of the dream. He didn't understand the context of the dream, the DNA of the dream, the enormity of the dream. Again, here's my problem. Maybe you identify with me. Most of my dreams, the star of the show is Josh Petersen. Most of my dreams I give up on very quickly. Defeat 1, defeat 2. That's it. That's all I'm giving it. Most of my dreams are very, very small. Make a decent living, be able to take my boys on vacation a couple times a year, buy a car that doesn't break down. And God goes, that's it? And again, I don't believe in health and wealth. I don't believe in the prosperity gospel. This is not like, hey, God's dream for your life is that you would be rich and drive really fancy cars and fly in private jets. It's just not that. I'm promising you. But what we think about doing for the kingdom is usually too small. And God goes, I got something bigger for you. And we say to God, but here's the thing, I'm afraid, I'm tired, and oh, by the way, I'm not qualified. You got the wrong person. I wonder if God would have sat down with Joseph, if Joseph, even as cocky as he was as a little kid, would have been like, lead an entire nation and save a region and be the heir, the like great uncle to your son? What? Somebody said once to me, this is not my phrase, it probably wasn't their phrase. But it goes something like this. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. So God doesn't go looking around for like, who are the most talented, the most beautiful, the most gifted, the most influential, the most whatever. They're the people that I'm going to do what I need to do through. That's not how he works. He finds the Josephs of the world. Have you met Jesus' disciples? They were not the creme de la creme of people. It's just not how God works. He will qualify you as he calls you. And sometimes we need to be willing to dream a little bigger, a little outside our box to understand that he will actually get us where we need to be in order to do what he wants us to do. It's just that sometimes I need some time in the cistern. Sometimes we need a walk behind a camel. Sometimes we need to sit in a cell. Sometimes we need to wait through our disappointments to see what God has on the other side. So what would it look like if you, instead of saying, God, here's my dreams for my life, we said, God, what are your dreams for my life? What are your dreams for our church? So here's what I want to do for the next 3-4 minutes is let you ask him that. Because I could say, hey, this week, at some point, I want you to find a quiet few minutes and ask God what his dreams are for your life. And you'll say, I'll do that, and then you won't do that. Because you're just like me. So we're going to take a few minutes, and we're going to play a music video on the screens. And it's going to be a song that we've already sung, performed by a band that we've been singing with all night. And the reason for the repeat is so that you don't sing along. You already sang it. The next few minutes are just for you to reflect and pray and wrestle. You have a sticker on your seat that looks something like this sticker. You also have a Sharpie on the seat back in front of you. And as you're wrestling and as you're thinking and as you're praying, there's 2 blanks that I'm going to ask you to fill out. The one blank is God's dreams for me. What sense do you have that God wants for you in your life? The other blank is us, Great Lakes Church, us as a community. What sense do you have that God is calling us to, that we're maybe unqualified at the moment to do for him, but that he'll bring us to? And then here's what we're going to do. I'll come back when the song is over and wrap us up. And then as you leave today, you're going to take this sticker, and on the front of the Next Step Center, you're going to peel your sticker off and slap it onto the front. There's big black boxes. We're going to fill those between here and the rest of the week. And they're going to live there for a while. So that every time you come in, you're reminded, God has dreams for my life and my church. And every week, as people are here cleaning and working and meeting and practicing and all those things, they're going to see those and they're going to pray for you. Now, don't put your name on it, because we want you to feel safe. But we want to be a community that comes together and goes, God, what is it that you have for us? So take 4 minutes and ask him.
I've searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise, treasures of faith, never enough. seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can.
Here's what I want you to think about. Every dream that is ever broken in your life, no matter what it is, because we've all got broken dreams, there's a piece that broke off, or several pieces that broke off, that are probably part of a bigger dream that God's going to put together in your life. It may be a different path than you thought. The final destination might even be different than you assumed. But no matter what, know this, that God's dreams are bigger than your dreams. So as you go today, put those dreams on that table so that together we can remember that. And together we can live into that. Understanding there might be challenges along the way. But in each and every one of them, we're never alone. Let me pray for you. God, thank you for the life of Joseph. It is one of the craziest stories that has ever been told. To think that you took this little arrogant boy bragging about his clothes from nothing to the bottom of the heap, to the top of the heap, and then even beyond is just, well, God, it's just so you. And what we know is that you're the same God today in our lives that you were then in his. And so we're going to hang on to the dreams that you are placing on our hearts as individuals and as a church, and trust that you'll help us get there because you know the way. And even though there are going to be moments where we don't feel like we're the right choice, will you remind us that we're yours, so we are. We love you. Thanks for loving us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for joining us here at Great Lakes Church. Again, my name is Carson, and I'm so glad that you chose to share some time with us this week. We hope something in this talk was meaningful to you, encouraging to you, and maybe even something worth writing down that you can go share with a friend. If you'd like to get involved, maybe join us at one of our physical locations in Southeast Wisconsin, or just be a part of our many other goings-on our social platforms or events in the area. Check out greatlakeschurch.com.